Hello, everyone. The clip you're about to hear is from one of our exclusive Patreon episodes on a recent horror release, and just like all of our other episodes, it might include major spoilers for said horror release, so don't listen to it if you haven't already seen it. You've officially been warned. And if you'd like to hear the full episode, just head on over to patreon.com/horrorqueers and subscribe today. Without further ado, here is your exclusive Patreon clip. You are correct, but I think what this movie does so well, and I wouldn't maybe I would call them kind of similar, but I rewatched Steven Soderbergh's Unsane a few weeks ago, and
okay, I haven't seen it, so tell me all about it.
With keeping things relatively spoiler. Wait, you haven't seen Unsane?
I have not, and it's super funny because a friend of mine, Alex Heaney from Seventh Row, is constantly badgering me. Like, she's not a horror fan, and she's constantly like, "I love this movie. Why will you not watch it and talk to me about it?"
I only asked that not because I'm like, how haven't you seen this? But I really just thought that you had talked about this on the podcast before.
I think we've talked about how I haven't seen it, and you gave me the same reaction.
Got it. Well, so basically, I'm not going to go into the plot here, but obviously that movie is about a woman who
she's not believed.
She's not believed, yeah. And she's committed against her will to this institution, but it's famous, quote unquote, because it's shot with an iPhone, and that some people hate that, but the camera is always like right on the main character, played by Claire Foy, so it really captures this kind of voyeuristic aspect, and because her stalker is always kind of near her, and so you're constantly worried, like, oh my god, like, where is he? Is he around? Who's watching her? Blah blah blah. And I link that to Watcher because, again, despite the fact that the narrative is pretty by the numbers, I think that Okuno captures the paranoia and the isolation and the loneliness in the way she directs this, especially with the lack of subtitles, which I really, really, really appreciate.
Ooh, yes.
I feel everything Monroe's character Julia feels in this movie. I just found it so palpable. Like, the tension was so palpable. Again, despite, I knew exactly where this movie was going to go.
Yeah, and that's saying something, right? Because the film is so expertly crafted from a technical perspective that it can still accomplish this even when it's not really surprising you narratively. And I think that's a testament to Okuno and Monroe. Like, their sort of joint flavors in this movie is making you care so deeply about Julia. Well, Okuno's camera and the way that she shoots it, and even like the framing, like I really took note of the framing this time, because Julia is constantly shot at these extreme long shots so that you can feel she's completely alone, like no one is there to help her, but then you feel that voyeurism creeping through, like she is constantly being watched. Yeah,
and I think, too, and again, not to compare it to another film, but again, this whole, like, this no one believes women type thing, I really think that you could compare this or double feature it with last year's Knocking, directed by Frida Kempf.
Right, yeah, you made that reference to me off air, and I thought that was an interesting pick. Again, a film that we will cover at some point in the future. A film I like a little bit less than this, but that film is also excellently shot.
I agree, and the reason I compare it to Watcher is because both of those films, I just wish they were about 5 minutes longer, and those 5 minutes were tacked on at the very, very end of the movie, because both of these films, they make their reveals, basically, in the very, very, the closing moments of the film, and then we are done. We don't get to see these women tell any of the people that didn't believe them, look at this shit.
Yeah, it's this weird phenomenon. You and I are going to cover a film that is actually very similar to this, but it's from quite a ways in the past on the main feed in about a month and a bit. And we had a similar complaint, and I'm just like, what is it about women in peril films, specifically stalker and voyeurism films, that think that once the danger has passed, that our interest in this story and these women diminishes? Because you and I are constantly like, no, I want to see what happens after. I either want to see how they process their trauma, I want to see them throw it back in the face of these fucking men who don't believe them, or I want a little bit of denouement.
Well, and you could make the argument that it's like, well, maybe that's not the point. However, with Watcher, I do think it's the point, because so much of this film is, I mean, I don't know, like when you first watch this, because again, this is both of our second times watching this, unless you're my husband, which is like his fourth time watching this.
It's his 18th time watching it.
It's very much a no one believes these women, and so, well, I don't know. Were you ever like, oh, maybe she's crazy the first time you watched this movie?
No, I've said this before, I think on the pod, and I will say it a million more times. if I have one problem with female-centric narratives in horror films that are sort of like this, it's that I always just believe the women, so there's nothing interesting in the are they going mad or are they going crazy or are they actually being stalked, hunted, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, they're being stalked, hunted, blah, blah, blah. Like, they are never actually going mad. Or at least not recently. Like, we've had a proliferation of these kinds of movies. Now, I don't think it's an issue with Watcher because I think the film lets you know very early on that it's not a Julia thing. Like, this is actually happening to her.
Yes. And I think that's the thing, though, is like I with Watcher, I feel like the catharsis that Okuno's trying to give us is that, oh, look, she is right. But for me, the real conflict is between her and her husband.
Atlas Avenue, a long stretch of road that encompasses everything the city of Kennett Heights has to offer. Neon lights, traffic, crime, the hustle and bustle of everyday life, and the craziest of characters. My office was above it all. My name is James Locke, and I'm a PI.
Hello, Mr. J. How the hell you doing today?
Good, Edith. Nearly every year I have a new case. New people to meet, new clues to discover, and new problems to solve. But I do it the old-fashioned way. No technology. Nothing post-1950. Hell, I don't even listen to podcasts, but you should. Atlas Avenue Beat is a spoof of the film noir genre with goofy characters, tons of wordplay, and non-stop raunchy humor. There's also 3 whole seasons out right now with more on the way. Just search for Atlas Avenue Beat wherever you listen to podcasts or visit us online at bloody.fm.
Hello, I'm Shelby Scott, the host of Scare You to Sleep, a podcast where I tell you spooky bedtime stories full of creepy sound effects and music that is soothing yet unsettling to help immerse you into a world of horror. This is a show for those of us who have realized horror can be a strange but relaxing escape from reality. Speaking of escapes, sometimes I lead you through guided nightmares, like a guided meditation, but instead of flowery meadows, I take you on a journey through your own personal nightmare. So come get lost in the terror with me. Listen to Scare You to Sleep wherever you listen to podcasts, or find us online at bloody.fm. Sweet screams.